Magandang araw sa inyo. My name is Neo from Played in Tagalog, and welcome back to another video. Right now, you may notice that the background is kind of different. I'm in my parents' room right now, and there's just a little bit of a change in setup. It's a long story. It's because this morning I tried connecting my microphone to this MacBook that I have, but it's just so hard to configure, so I just decided I'll use these headphones as a mic since they're pretty loud anyways, and that's why I'm wearing these headphones over here, and it looks kind of weird. I don't do that a lot. So yeah, I don't know. I tried my best so that this background wouldn't be as messy. I mean, I don't think you guys would even notice it anyway, so I don't think it matters. Alrighty, so let's get into this video. Today's topic is this, this today's topic is what Filipinos actually sound like. You're gonna be seeing me look over there a lot because I have my notes over here so that I don't forget what I'm gonna say. This video is about how Filipinos actually sound like, or what is the natural way of speaking. And now I categorized our topics into these things, which is the formal and informal. And within formal and informal, we also have the speaking and the writing. And I mean, for writing, there's kind of like two ways that we can categorize it. But I decided to go for writing and chatting, and we'll talk about what I mean in those things later on. So this video might be a little longer. I'll try my best to shorten it and not waste too much time, but at the same time I'll try to be as informative as I can. So let's get straight into it. So we're going to kick things off with the formal side. We'll get to the informal stuff later. So first things first is the formal speaking. In the formal speaking, there's two things that we can possibly get, which is probably talking to an older person or maybe talking to like your boss that's probably young or something like that. Just formal speaking. You get the main idea. Most of the time in a lot of formal speaking, you will be speaking in English, if I were to say so myself. Like, let's say job interviews or enrollments, you're probably going to be speaking in English. Like, especially in job interviews or like just anything along the lines of that, I'm pretty sure you will be speaking English for the most part. But if ever that you do code switch in with Tagalog, code switch, in case you don't know, is mixing English Tagalog. That was the previous video, in case you didn't see it. Um, it's possible to do some code switching when you're in a job interview. Sometimes they use that. Like I said, one of the reasons, remember, some expressions make more sense in Tagalog, sometimes more in English, etc. So yeah, for the most part, you're going to be using English if you're going to go for job interviews or talk with your boss. But sometimes you will speak Tagalog a lot, and you may have to be familiar with these words, po and opo. This will apply not only to higher class people, but also to older people, and it's more prominent in older people. You will most likely say po and opo to, your elder people, like your parents, your grandparents. You may be familiar with this term if you've ever been just a tad bit familiar with Tagalog, but if you're not, then I don't. Yeah, you have to know this one. So po and opo is kind of like one of those filler words, in my opinion. It's like a filler word where it's like a word in between it that adds a sense of politeness. So po is just a word, and opo is the formal version of yes, which is originally oo. And yeah, that's our saying for yes. We say oo. But formally, it would be opo with a P. And po is used in between so that it sounds more formal and more polite. Sometimes you may use po when you're being formal, like to your boss, but there are some cases where like they treat their bosses like their friend, like my dad, for instance. So, you know, it all depends on the situation, but for the most part, those are kind of things that you need to know about the po and opo, and also you'll be most likely speaking English in formal, but in polite manners, you will be speaking normal Tagalog with code switching and etc. And I'd also like to point out that when you're talking to older people, you will most likely experience hearing more native Tagalog words. What I mean with that is that um, there's a difference between Tagalog and Filipino. This is a subsection right here. I'm going to give you guys a subsection, which is the difference between Tagalog and Filipino. Right? Let's just do a little bit of a detour. So, Tagalog and Filipino. right? It sounds kind of confusing. I mean, they say Filipino, but they also say Tagalog. Like, which one is the correct term? You might get confused by that. And let me just briefly explain the difference. The difference is that Tagalog, right? The native Tagalog uses the more deeper words that don't have loan words. And Filipino is the one that the modernized version and has more loan words, like from English or Spanish. To just give you an example, let's say the word university. If you were to translate that, it would normally be something like universidad, which is most likely just directly taken from Spanish, universidad. But the Tagalog, the native Tagalog, would probably be something like, actually, I don't know. Let me ask Google Translate. Give me a second. Yeah, okay, so I found it. So, if you type in Google Translate, it will tell you universidad. That is the Filipino term, Filipino, because it's a loan word. But the Tagalog one, which is the more native version, the one that is our own words, it would be pamantasan. That is the more native Tagalog word, something like that. This word in particular isn't exactly the best example of it, but in most cases, when you're talking to native Filipinos or to like older Filipinos, like your grandparents or something that's probably Filipino, you'll most likely hear more of these deeper words. Like even me, as growing up, I heard a lot of these deep words that I didn't even know exist. Like seriously, there are some words that I didn't even know even had a translation in Tagalog at all, and I only knew because of older people. Like for instance, the word for cake. Normally, I would just say cake. That's it. I would just say cake. But turns out it actually has a translation, which is pan de crema, which I'm pretty sure is just directly taken from Spanish. I have no idea. But yeah, just be aware that you're most likely going to be hit with unfamiliar words, or maybe if you're fluent in Spanish, you might be familiar to hear some more Spanish words. It depends on the older person that you're talking to. Maybe you'll hear words that sound more like Spanish. Maybe some words are more native Tagalog, like pamantasan instead of universidad, or maybe kagawad instead of you know, ministro, something like that. I'm not too sure. Just you may hear some substituted words, you know. So yeah, you might experience that if ever you're gonna talk to an older person. So yeah, that's just kind of like a heads up. You might get hit with deeper words, kind of like in English when you get hit with deeper English words that you don't even know existed. You know what I mean? So now, after formal speaking, let's go on to formal writing. Formal writing, if I were to say to specify, it would probably be something like writing an email, writing a message to upper class. So one thing I will say about formal writing is that you're also most likely going to be writing in English. Like for the most part, it will be in English. Like writing to, let's say, like to your school, and you're going to inquire something. You will write in 100% English. I'm not kidding. It's actually better to write in English. Like, I'm serious. The reason why we prefer English on these formal settings like jobs or schools, anything that's formal, the reason why we use English is, of course, like I said from the previous video about code switching, is that some expressions make more sense in English, you know? That's the reason why we write emails in English, because it just makes more sense in English compared to putting it in Tagalog, which will probably be even harder to understand. In some other countries, the reason why they translate to their own language is, of course, so that it's easier to understand. But in the Philippines, it's like the opposite. If you write it in Tagalog, sometimes it's even harder to understand. You know? Remember, if you recall from the previous video, that's what it was about, right? Like I mentioned the fact that some words just make more sense in English and vice versa. I'm going to try and look for a school email that I had here. I'm going to try my best to not leak any information. Okay, so I opened my email. I'm going to try my best to not leak any information. So I'm just going to read this in English as it is in the email and blank out any information. Good day, everyone. Thank you for filling up the registration for our virtual training and seminars. We from the are inviting you to join our virtual training and seminars. The following will be scheduled the events and some dates and the topics, blah blah blah. So yeah, everything is written in English. But if I translated this in Tagalog, it sounds pretty unnatural in my opinion. So I'm going to try and translate this. Magandang araw sa inyo. Maraming salamat sa pagpuno ng registration sa aming virtual training and seminar. Kami mula sa ay iniimbitahan kayo upang sumali sa aming virtual training and seminar. Ang sumusunod ay magiging schedule ng mga event. Okay, I tried my best, and you can see that I tried so hard to translate some particular words, and some words I just can't translate. I mean, there's also some of them that I kept there, like the virtual training and seminars. That one I kept it there because it makes more sense that way, because if I translate that, it's just so hard to translate most of these words like registration or yeah, schedule. Like, I mean, I'm certain there are deeper words for it, but to be fair, who is going to waste the time and just ask like every while writing this email would be like, hey, what's the Tagalog of schedule again? Like that's like something we have all the time. I will tell you that it's like a common thing. The fact that natives will literally just be like, hey, what's the Tagalog of this word again? And also sometimes the opposite way around, like, hey, what's the English of this word again? I forgot. Like you just suddenly have mental block. It's like the problems of being bilingual. You just mix it up, you know. That's what I'm saying. It's like most of the time you're going to be writing in English. And if you are going to write in Tagalog like you really need to, that's very unlikely in my opinion. Especially like I don't know what kind of situation you have, but like let's say I don't know. I mean like the only occasion I can think of that makes you write in Tagalog is let's say like you're part of an organization, right? You're part of this organization that uses Tagalog as its like main thing. So therefore you're more known as using these Tagalog things. Therefore you would have to write in Tagalog. But to be fair, I don't think eh, it's just advisable for you to write in Tagalog. It's just very hard. It's very hard to write in Tagalog, and it's very rare as well. It depends on your situation. But if I were to be honest with you, I would probably just hand it to a native speaker, just because of how, especially if you're a beginner, it's gonna be very hard. Because there's a lot of nuances that you need to be aware of, and you need to be aware of some expressions that are in English that we usually use. An example is writing the time. If you're gonna write it in Tagalog, you don't really like in English you write it as like 9:00 a.m., right? Something like that. But we have a completely different way of writing, and we don't even use this in an everyday context. We use it only when writing in Tagalog formally. But that's rare, like I said. That's a rare occasion to have. This is how we write. So you would write ika, ika dash the number ng umaga, which means morning, or hapon, afternoon, or gabi, or evening. You know, that's what you're going to write. You see how complicated that is. I mean, maybe it's not that complicated if you get used to it, but to be fair, in my opinion, this is probably not that the most efficient. That's the reason why we write in English. There's just so much nuances to know about. That's why you're just gonna be using English for the most part. And that's kind of the ironic thing. To be fluent in Tagalog and to know what Filipinos use, you gotta be fluent in English as well, which is kind of crazy to think about. Besides those nuances, you gotta be aware of some expressionary words or some particular phrases used in there. Like whenever writing a formal letter, I'm trying to recall the lessons I had in elementary. Is that you have to start it off with like sometimes like in English you would put dear and then the person, right? There's I'm not gonna waste my time. I'm just gonna put examples on the editing. Just place an example right here of how you would probably start a letter and what it looks like. Okay, I'm just gonna put some examples right here on the screen because I just can't think right now. I can't think. Oh man, maybe because of the change of environment and where I'm recording, and I'm just not used to this. So yeah, so for the most part, you're most likely never going to write in Tagalog formally. You're most likely going to be writing in English, and if you really do need to, just hand it to a native because that's like you're going to need a lot of deep Tagalog words, you know? You need to be like native level to be able to write something like that, be able to use deep words that we don't use every day, such as sapagkat, dahil. I mean, I use dahil, but like whatever. Sapagkat, samakatwid. Like, oh my god. It's such deep words that we don't use them every day. And I would probably only use them in an essay. I would only use those words in an essay. I wouldn't really use that. I would use a lower level word. So now we're done with the formal section, and right now I am 17 minutes into my recording. This is going to be a huge file. Anyways, let's not waste too much time in storage on my phone. So next we're on to our informal speaking. Alright, we're on to the informal section. Informal speaking, I'm pretty sure this informal section is going to be kind of shorter than the others. So first things first, informal speaking. Speaking to your friends, and yeah, that's it. Speaking to your friends. So one of the things that you have there is, of course, colloquialism, slang, code switching with English, and sometimes swearing, depending on what kind of friends you have. If you have friends that love to swear, then you're going to be swearing a lot. But I'm not going to teach you how to swear in Tagalog. Just ask some native speakers yourselves. I'm not going to do that in this video. So yeah, that's like the hard part about speaking in with Filipinos. It's the fact that we speak fast, like I said, like 2 videos ago, right? Remember why Filipinos speak fast. And not only that, there's also colloquialism, like um, some little nuances in pronunciation. There's also slang, and the slang, in my opinion, is the hardest part. I would say the same thing for like Indonesian when I was studying Indonesian. It was really hard. Indonesian slang was hard because the fact that it's different for every island in Indonesia. But in the Philippines, it's like kind of universal. The slangs are kind of like um, they're the same in throughout the entire country because I mean there's a little bit of differences depending on where you are, but for the most part they're all the same given the internet. That's I'm just gonna shorten that and not add anything extra. But it's just really hard because slang can be either full Tagalog or a combination of Tagalog and English, or maybe just pure English. So there's so much code switching involved in this, and that's gonna be the hardest part about learning Tagalog is knowing when and when not, and when to code switch and knowing certain slangs, or and some examples of some slangs that are extremely popular. I'm pretty sure you've already heard them if you've spent enough time in the internet with Filipinos, such as sana all, and to explain, sana all just means I hope all, and sana just means to hope or to wish, and sana all just is like a phrase that you use when you're envious of someone, like, oh my god, sana all ganun, like sana all may jowa, something like that. I don't know. That sounded cringy when I said that. Yeah, there's a lot of slang, and in my opinion, it's just all about like getting used to how Filipinos talk. Just like maybe immerse a lot, watch some Filipino movies. And if you really want to get into modern slang and make sure you're up to date, you really need to be up to date because Philippines has a world of its own. Then you have to watch some modern comedy movies, I guess, so that you can be updated. Or if you want to know about the memes that are happening in the Philippines, I would suggest this channel that reviews Filipino memes. I would consider him like the Filipino PewDiePie or something. If you want to be aware of what memes or what Filipinos are laughing at, you gotta watch this guy's channel. He also makes some gameplay, but he reviews a lot of Filipino memes, and yeah, I highly suggest you watch from him so that you can have knowledge of slang and memes and all that stuff, so that you can be updated all the time. Now let's move on to informal writing and chatting. I'm not going to include informal writing, like writing a letter, but it's just to your friend. Like, who does that these days? Come on. But there is a format of that. Like, we learned that in elementary. If you're going to write a letter to your friend, there's a format. I'm just going to put an example here on the screen. So yeah. But we're going to focus on informal chatting because that makes more sense. And if you're going to ask me, what about formal chatting? Why didn't you cover that one earlier? Formal chatting is pretty much the same as informal chatting, but you just remove all the colloquial and slang, and you still use point and elbow, and that's it. There you go. So informal chatting is also one of the hardest things to distinguish. Um, it's most likely also going to be hard for you. So similar to speaking, there's a lot of colloquial and slang, but might I tell you there's these colloquial typings, or basically alterations in typings that mean a different word. So you really need to be careful about that. Like, I'm not even gonna mention through pronouncing them. Like, here's just some examples here on the screen. I'm just gonna try this. I hope I can edit this properly. Um, here are just examples of some spelling alterations. They alter the spelling a little bit, but they're trying to say a different word. And you really need to watch out for this because you might get confused, like, oh, what word is that? It's actually just a misspelled version of it. You know, we do that a lot, and even Indonesians do the same thing. You know, they like change the spelling or shorten it, or like just put like only consonants in there. We do that too, but recently these days it's starting to become in not a loose trend, and it's becoming what we call jejemon. It's hard to explain what this word means, but just here's an example, and you'll see what I mean when I say jejemon or jeje. Basically anything from 2010, whatever. So yeah, just in informal chatting, there's that colloquial typing or word shortening, slang, memes, whatever. And also, one important thing I want to add is the fact that we always use ha ha ha, like this one, this string of text. We use this a lot. Like almost every message we use this. Even when it's not funny. Well, you get what I mean. Just, it's kind of like saying lol or lamau when you're saying stuff in English, you know. If you really want to sound like a native speaker, you can add this to almost all of your messages, and you know, you'll be fine. You will look like a native speaker because we use this thing a lot. Like it's the equivalent of saying lamau, lol, xd in English. We just use this, and it's more common, and you will sound more like a Filipino. And it's kind of like interesting, like whenever I talk to my friends that, I mean, some of my Filipino friends were more used to speaking in English, and we use Luma XD, blah, 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 blah. Even though it seems like that thing's like old or something, we still use it when we're speaking English. But when we switch to Tagalog, we use these things, which is kind of crazy. It's like a sudden change in chatting attitude, you know? So yeah. Um, There you go. Those are all of my lists of what Filipinos actually sound like. There are different attitudes, and the way the speaking alters depending on the situation. And yeah, this video is so long. It's almost half an hour since I've been recording this, and I need to edit something else as well. I don't want to get myself burnt out today. So yeah, thank you so much for this video. I'm not planning to make the Discord server just yet. I think I will just maybe reach like a milestone. Maybe let's say like, I don't know, 1,000 subscribers so that I can make a community post. Then I'll make a Discord server. 1,000 subscribers is a lot to reach, but if I upload consistently, I will make it there eventually. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, and that's it. Goodbye.